it came into my life just at the right time, for one thing. And I loved the people concerned. It was a big happy family. And I think the writing was very good. I think within realising it wasn't for me, Sue Nicholls, although I loved it, it was for children and to teach them things within the concept of having little stories. And I think it did that brilliantly. I think as far as when I worked on Pipkins goes, it was such fun. I do recall wanting to get up each day and dash to work, which I have to say sometimes these days I don't want to do, which is a terrible admission to make. But I think you have to work just as hard. I mean, you go into Pipkins and the other telly shows that I've done for children, and you have to concentrate just as much and give it your 100%. But perhaps sometimes it is more fun because you can become a bit silly, which if you're doing grown-up acting, they sometimes don't allow you to do. So I quite like that you can be silly and a bit giggly with your fellow artistes, which I like doing. Puppets always, to me, take on personalities of their own. I think that's possibly down to the wonderful people who are being their personalities. In this case, we had a wonderful lot of people who made them into real-life people. And I really felt I was talking to those little creatures, to Pig and Tortoise. Mainly, of course, I talked to Hartley, and I think I was probably better talking to them than to the two presenters. I think I had trouble talking to the two presenters. The animals didn't worry me. It was an eye-opener because the set, of course, was built up. So we actors, we humans, had to be on the set, which was built up, while the people that were working, my fellow artistes, Hartley and Tortoise and Pig, were down below. So you were high up. That was quite novel because one was constantly feeling, until you got used to it, that you were walking the plank on some exotic boat, you know, and you might topple off. And I think many's the time I nearly did topple off if I had to kind of drag Hartley into the garden. But I got used to it. In fact, when I went to do other dramas, I expected the set to be built exactly the same. Terribly upset that I had to walk into a room and it wasn't built on stilts. I remember very well working with the two presenters. One was Jonathan Kidd, who worked with Jonathan's father, as a matter of fact. And then the next one was Paddy O'Hagan. And they were lovely because they kept it going. You see, you can't get away from Hartley. Hartley was the kind of, he seemed to me the main person in the house. And the two presenters were lovely, but you always thought that Hartley was the boss. Tortoise was kind of quite sweet, but he didn't talk to me a lot. Yeah. I'd never met Octavia, my darling. You're so Hartley, you're so. She was like, oh. And then Pig, of course, who was more Birmingham than Mrs Muddle. Mrs Muddle, in fact, was West Midlands, which is Walsall and Wolverhampton. Pig was more Birmingham. Though I remember Pig, actually everybody always does remember Pig. When you talk to the mothers and the children, they remember Pig. They don't remember Mrs Muddle, funny enough. I don't know where she was. But I loved Hartley with Mrs Muddle because Mrs Muddle would come, oh, hello, Hartley. Just popped in to see if I could borrow a cup of sugar. Normally have a lot of sugar in my cupboard, but today I didn't seem to be able to find any. Yes, all right, Mrs Muddle, you can have some sugar. I can't do it, I don't know, Joyce Grenfell. It was done more or less in one take, if I remember rightly, as long as you didn't drop dead or fall off the set, which compared to today is very good, because we had to burst into song with the soundtrack. We had to make sure that we moved from A to B into the little rooms and all the things we had to do. And I think, if my memory serves me right, we used to do that without too many going back to start. Compared to today, where we don't have the rehearsal time, but now, today, in any show, unless it's live, one of these live shows, you can just stop. and you can stop as many times as you want, and you do it again till you get it right. We didn't have that luxury, really. If we had, when we were filming them, had to keep stopping, I don't think the powers that be would have been very happy with us, because we'd have been there far longer than they wanted us. I have so many memories of things that Mrs Muddle did, but the one I remember totally, mainly because I was really very proud of myself, never mind Mrs Muddle. Mrs Muddle had to make an omelette to show Hartley and the boys what to do, and we had to do it there and then during the take. Well, I will admit that I'm not the best cook in the world anyway. But just about make an omelette, but I did it. I had to do it while we were shooting and it was going on, and I was quite nervous about that, and I had to pretend to be you see, Hartley, what you have to do, you have to get your egg, Hartley, and then first of all, cracking the egg nearly made me fall off the block, then you put it in, then you did this, and God was with me, because in fact it worked very well. But I can tell if I ever see that episode, that my heart is in my mouth, that am I going to get through this? Is it suddenly, is the pan going to catch fire? Is it going to look like an omelette when it's finished, or just a rather nasty piece of scrambled egg? But I remember that very well. And then Hartley, and I think Pig, Hartley said, "Oh, this is very nice, Mrs Muddle, thank you very much." And it was just the joy of seeing a Hartley try to eat this egg, which, of course, to me was a real person, but he spooned it and it got stuck between his two big teeth. Very nice, Mrs Muddle. So, and if you look at it, you'll see it. And you thought, where is that? And then I realised that for one moment, this isn't a proper hare. Where's that egg going when it goes through his little mouth? One didn't like to think, but if you watch it, you'll see. It does it very well. Whoever was behind Hartley did it very well. I think Mrs Muddle quite liked living next door. There was one time when she was in a bit of a state and she was trying to sunbathe. And she was the only time I've seen her cross with them, actually. And it was Pig, I think, and Hartley, of course, thought that she was a bit depressed because she'd mentioned she was very tired. But she was only tired because she'd had busy time washing and everything. But Hartley and Pig decided that she needed to be given rest, or feeding up, that was it. They decided she needed feeding up, so they made buns. Pig made a bun, and they took this tray of buns in the yard and then started to throw them, quite by chance, they weren't meant to on Mrs Muddle, who was sleeping on her deck chair in the yard, so she got covered in hot cross buns and she became very irate. So, I can't rest, I've got, what are you doing? You're throwing those buns on me. Goodness sake, I'm trying to rest in my garden. So she came round and sat in their garden, I remember that. But that's really, oh God, you see, memories, it's all coming back. And I haven't drawn breath. I criticise Hartley and listen to Mrs Muddle. She hasn't drawn breath. She'll need to rest in a deck chair with her buns. Hot cross bun. And of course the immortal. If I've got something that you haven't got and you want to borrow it, here it is. Friends are here to help one another out. Call it sharing. Immortal thing. I realise that I've been quoted as saying I adored acting opposite and with a tatty hair. I am so appalled. I hate the fact that I even thought that. I must have been, I don't know, must have had a sip of sherry, because I must have hurt his feelings. I pray God Hartley never read that or saw it or was told about it. But probably Pig might have let it out, because he wasn't tatty, he was brilliant. And I think he did the best he could with the fur he had. And this is, we can't all have expensive fur coats.